had always been one of my dreams.
Growing up, I liked science a lot, so I was into physical therapy up until high school.
My parents, they gave me an operation set, the toy. Spent hours, playing with that whole set.
Wasn't one of those kids that had that operation game. There are no doctors in my family.
There was a period of 2 years that we lived in a small trailer without electricity or running water, so that's what created the interest in becoming a doctor, was being able to intervene.
By becoming a doctor, I'd be able to impact more change in communities similar to back home in Jamaica and also in Brooklyn where I live.
I knew I wanted to be a doctor since I was 6, so it's like, okay, I'm going to medical school, but how am I going to pay for it? How am I going to do this? I just went to college on scholarship, and now I'm going to get into a mountain load of debt just trying to continue that dream.
I did some Google searching, and I read about this scholarship opportunity to study medicine in Cuba, and it was like, Cuba.
Someone was like, well, you should look into this program about studying in Cuba.
And I said, that is insane. That's absolutely crazy.
I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? That's the best, medical system in the world. Like, they train the best doctors.
And then 3 days later, I applied.
And I found out about ELAM, and I said, you know what? This is it.
Cuba is known for this community-based practice of medicine.
Lo que hoy se pide por la Organización Mundial de la Salud, de que todos los seres humanos deben recibir asistencia médica, pues desde los inicios de nuestro triunfo revolucionario es una de las premisas de nuestro país.
It's really tremendous when you think about the way that Cuba approaches healthcare.
In Cuba, everything is community medicine. That is what primary care is. The doctor lives in the neighborhood that they work in, and they see patients who live in a few blocks radius of where their clinic is.
It kind of gives the people here a sense that, hey, if I need to go see my doctor, I can just go right around the corner.
The patient goes to the doctor, and the doctor goes to the patient. A lot of times you would have physicians in the neighborhood to make house calls, especially after a baby's been born. They would come to the house and see if everything is set.
Every doctor knows off the top of their hand statistics about their patient population. I have 100 asthmatics, and of those, 93 of them are controlled. One of them had an exacerbation yesterday, so we have to see. Or, I noticed a lot of the teenagers are getting chlamydia in my area, so we really need to, do something about that. Maybe we'll have some educational talks.
There are doctors and communities that know as many as 200-300 patients in their neighborhood and can provide home visits. There are polyclinics, so that if there's a need for some kind of medical attention, that would be the next level of care. And then of course there's a hospital. Here in the U.S., too often when people who don't have resources become ill, the only option they have is the emergency room.
Here's a country who has these different shortages, but they're still able to have really good health indicators, some better than the U.S.
La promoción y la prevención es lo más importante. La medicina curativa, la rehabilitación se encarece muchísimo más.
La prevención en salud pública es lo primordial. Realmente si evitamos que ocurran enfermedades tanto infecciosas como no infecciosas, estamos recuperando la salud de un país y propiciando que el pueblo esté más feliz.
In Cuba, they export doctors. Too often here in the U.S., we export soldiers.
El mundo nos conoce a través de nuestros médicos y técnicos de la salud. Incluyen varios programas. Está el Programa Integral de Salud que Cuba desarrolla desde el año 1998 en América Latina, el Caribe, África y también Asia. Incluye el programa de la Operación Milagro, que no solo lo desarrollamos en Venezuela. Hoy tenemos más de 50 centros oftalmológicos en prácticamente toda América Latina.
Donde se encuentran en estos momentos más de 60 brigadas médicas cubanas brindando la continuidad de los principios y de la ética de nuestra revolución.
Cuba's commitment to global health is tremendous. And you've seen it, time after time, crisis after crisis in countless countries. In Nicaragua and El Salvador and Mexico and various parts of Central America, there have been countless efforts to be supportive in various parts of Africa.
Cuba's role in fighting the Ebola crisis has been recognized internationally. The Henry Reeve Medical Brigade, based in Cuba and deployed to global disaster zones and epidemic outbreaks, was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize.
So it seems to be now two levels of healthcare which is very relevant for Africa and for developing countries. Primary healthcare on one hand and emergency healthcare on the other hand.
When Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans, Cuba offered to send doctors.
I was in my second year of ELAM, and I can remember there were Cuban doctors prepared and ready to go to New Orleans. They were staying with us at ELAM, and they had their backpacks which were full of medications, and they were ready to go to New Orleans and serve.
Eso forma parte de que Cuba ayude al mundo, precisamente de los orígenes de nuestra revolución. De la sangre que llevamos los cubanos, de ayudar.
They know that they physically cannot put Cuban doctors everywhere, but they can train people from these countries to learn the Cuban healthcare system hands-on and to go back to their countries.
Sobre esa base, pues vamos a extenderlo a todas partes del mundo, no solamente con la prestación de los servicios de los médicos cubanos, sino también con la formación de los recursos médicos de otras partes del mundo y que luego, de formados, puedan brindar los servicios de manera gratuita con todos los valores que aprendieron acá en sus comunidades.
ELAM, the Latin American School of Medicine, was formerly a naval base located in the outskirts of Havana that was converted into a medical school by the Cuban government. When President Fidel Castro came to the United States to address the United Nations, it was really at that time that he extended this offer to provide these scholarships to young people in the U.S., with the only understanding being that when they returned home, they would practice medicine in underserved communities. In the year 2000, IFCO was leading a delegation of Congressional Black Caucus members to Cuba to learn more about the reality there. And it was then that Mississippi Congressman Benny Thompson remarked about the incredible health disparities in Mississippi.
Estamos dispuestos a conceder un número de becas.
I said, look, we are willing to grant a number of scholarships
para jóvenes
for youth
pobres de su distrito
youth from your districts
que no puedan pagar los $200,000 que cuesta una carrera universitaria.
When Fidel Castro initially made the offer, it was of course seen as a wonderful gift, but I think that there were really many people who didn't believe that it was possible. It was my father, the late Reverend Lucius Walker, who was the executive director of IFCO at the time, who believed that this was indeed something that could be done. And it was through his efforts that IFCO actually developed a process for recruiting, mentoring, and nurturing these students throughout their 6 to 7 year medical school training.
Lucio era un hombre preocupado por todo, ¿me entiendes? Entonces, esa gente para uno tiene un valor tremendo porque te enseñan a cómo conducirte, a cómo comportarte con el prójimo. Por eso uno admira tanto a Fidel, a Lucio.
And he did this because he really recognized the value that this program would offer not only U.S. communities, but the young people who would become these doctors, many of them young people of color.
Thanks to Reverend Lucius Walker for opening that door and fostering that relationship and defining solidarity.
The students we have brought
Los estudiantes que hemos traído
come not only to study medicine,
vienen no solo para estudiar medicina,
but to learn from Cuba,
sino también para aprender de Cuba
how to build a better world.
IFCO is a grassroots community organization. We travel to Cuba in a challenge to the U.S. blockade of Cuba to deliver humanitarian aid. We're the sole U.S. organization to recruit and to facilitate the medical scholarships that Cuba offers to U.S. students.
There was a written application that we had to complete. We also had to complete a certain amount of years of college-level science courses. And we had to demonstrate that we really would want to work in underserved communities and give back. After the written application, then there was an interview process. I was interviewed by various doctors, social workers, different types of people that were interviewing just to see what kind of person you were, if you were someone that was into doing volunteer work, that was into giving back. After we had the interview process, then we had an orientation, which was a wonderful experience. To this day, I still remember my orientation. We had different activities that really built collective responsibility. Representatives from Interreligious Foundation for Community Organization were observing and seeing how we would work together. They really wanted to make sure that we would be prepared for the Cuban experience.
We got to Cuba. Our first experiences there were awesome. I got off the plane to be greeted by so many welcoming people. And I just remember thinking to myself, this place is home, because I tell everybody, like, Cuba is Black Harlem speaking Spanish. I got there and I was like, oh my God, this is my people. These are my people. You look like my aunt, you look like my uncle, you look like my mom.
When I got to ELAM, it was a totally different experience about how they approached education.
It's modeled more closely to the European system, so you have longer training. It's 6 years as opposed to 4, and you spend more time doing clinical rotations as a result of that, and more time at the bedside.
When I started my medical program there were 54 plus countries represented, medical students. Students from South America, Central America, from Africa, from the Pacific Islands, from the Caribbean islands.
Congo, Nigeria, South Africa, Paraguay, Chile.
Just all over the globe.
We speak different languages, so at the same time, we all have to learn, Spanish. This is exactly how we communicate and how we learn here. We start off our pre-med year with the basic sciences in Spanish, of course. First year, we have morphology courses. So we have our morpho courses. We have our integrated medicine course.
The second year of medical school here at ELAM is composed of your anatomy, pathology, physiology, microbiology, and genetics class.
Also the psychological component, the social components that affect health in a very concrete manner.
There's one thing that Cuba taught us. They would always say that medicine is biopsychosocial. So it's biological, it's psychological, and it's social. It's not just based on the human body and that's it. That's not the only thing you focus on. You focus on what's going on mentally with the patient, and you focus on what's going on socially, what's going on around them in their household and their community that could be affecting their health.
It's a lot of studying, day-to-day studying. We have a lot of homework. It's medical school.
So it's been going very well. It's intense. Because of the volume of material.
Academically, it's been both very challenging, but also very motivating and very exciting.
3rd, 4th, 5th, it's 6 years. You spend a great deal of time at the bedside.
Here it's very, very clinical. you're with the patient. One of the key things that they teach you is to make contact with the patient. Let the patient know that you are a human being and that they are a human being and not just a sickness.
I think the highlight of studying medicine in Cuba for my family medicine rotation was being able to make those house calls. Because you actually really had a chance to put in that social aspect of healthcare and take a look at their environment and see what could be affecting their health. Because a lot of times it's something that can be prevented.
¿Cuál es la diferencia? Y lo pudiéramos comparar con el resto del mundo, de ser solidarios, ¿ya? De ser honestos, de ser compañeristas, y es uno de los valores fundamentales que debe tener todo médico. Ya cuando se termine su formación como médico de ciencia y conciencia, debe tener estos valores para ayudar así a todos los países del resto del mundo.
There's no class ranking. That's not an issue. The idea is that everybody's going to do well. And so they have a system set up where, certain students who are doing really well in the class become what they called monitors, and then they would set up study sessions for the students who weren't doing as well.
Teachers would make themselves available to us 24/7, and we would have group study where we would all, get together and study.
This was let's all, do well together and really help each other. And so it was one of the first times that I actually liked school.
At the time, there were so many things that he would begin to implement.
We plan to keep the embargo on Cuba.
And so after 3 years of going through the program, studying hard, this is the goal and the dream, and we thought that it was going to exist, we got the call that, okay, you guys have to leave. And we were all going crazy, like, what is going on? What's happening? From the Cuban side, all of our teachers were like, okay, this is what we'll do. We'll put your exams in order, because we were almost about 2 or 3 weeks away from our exams. And everybody started to study and was ready to do that. And so from that end, they were like, we're gonna push through it. We're gonna figure out how to make this work so that you guys will finish out this year. From the IFCO side of things, we began to launch a full-out scale campaign to all of our congressional members and saying, look at this program, look at what they've managed to do in the last 3 or 4 years that they've been here. Are you going to deny our students a chance to go to medical school for free and to come back and work for the underserved communities? They began to lobby around people who said, we care about this program, we want it to exist, we want them to finish. And literally, almost within a few weeks short of the next following school year, Colin Powell actually decided to allow us to continue on in our studies. So we still hadn't known up until a few weeks before whether we would be returning to finish school. And we continued our studies and, went all the way through. And then 2007, that year we did it, we graduated.
Recibirán sus títulos de graduado de las ciencias médicas en La Habana 1.532 estudiantes de nuestras carreras. Estados Unidos de Norteamérica con 21 y México con 17.
I also want to thank the Commander-in-Chief, Fidel Castro. This was his dream. Esto fue su sueño. Sin este sueño, no estuviéramos aquí. Without that dream, we wouldn't be here today.
We have come through some things together here in Cuba. We have come from not speaking Spanish to dominating Spanish and learning medicine in Spanish. I mean, come on, we're pretty awesome.
To all my ancestors who worked so hard for us to accomplish what we've accomplished in our lives. Y'all don't know, but I'm a little girl from the projects. There are no university students in my family. There are no doctors in my family. And I'm so happy to be here.
We're going to change the world if we so please. Si deseamos, vamos a cambiar el mundo, este mundo. And we're going to make it a better place for everyone. Vamos a hacerlo mejor lugar para todo el mundo.
All medical school graduates, whether they graduate from U.S. programs or international programs, must take a series of tests known as the U.S. Medical Licensing Examination.
I was very, very lucky. I found a tutor, another student and he prepared me for English-speaking tests in Spanish.
Start studying for the tests as soon as you can and try to take them as you go. I think some people wait till the end of the med school to take all the tests, and that is a big burden, and it's going to kind of delay being able to apply for the match.
It's really incredible to see that essentially after 10 years that there are well over 100 U.S. graduates of this program.
And they are currently now serving in those underserved communities throughout New York City, California, New Mexico, Mississippi, and several other regions in the U.S. And that's unheard of because here in the States, as she mentioned before, we don't have many doctors of color that are in poor communities.
Based on my training in Cuba, I could go anywhere in the world, wherever the calling, wherever the need is. If there's a disaster, wherever, I know that I can participate and be effective.
There's so many benefits to going to medical school in Cuba, the language and the fact that it's a scholarship program and how that allows me to be free at this point in my career to kind of do whatever I want without having to worry about loans.
Being debt-free, I'm truly able to help and be in communities or be in hospitals or being areas where I am needed the most.
One example is right here in New York City at the Wyckoff Heights Medical Center in Brooklyn.
We are in the middle of a underserved community. In the Brooklyn population, we see a very high rate of hypertension, diabetes, heart conditions, asthma.
This was a hospital that was in a community where the needs were tremendous. And this was a hospital where the chief medical officer really pursued us.
The ELAM graduates, without exception, have a philosophical sense of mission to provide care to the most disadvantaged.
It's very challenging because it is in an underserved community, but I learned so much. I'm so thankful to the patients, and I feel very connected with the community. My mother's from Brooklyn, New York, and I've had family members who have actually gone to Wyckoff hospitals. Spanish does come in handy. I speak Spanish 85% of the time that I'm at work. I speak lots of Spanish.
They are well educated. They come out, they're able to pass their exams, they're able to get into U.S. residency programs. In the residency programs I was able to directly interview, gave rave reviews about the students from ELAM that have gone through their residency programs. They described them as mature, professional, dedicated, culturally sensitive, having Spanish fluency, and really devoted to primary care.
There's a very skewed way in which medical care is paid for in the U.S. Medical care is remunerated based on procedures. So if you're some very specialized person who does this tiny operation in the retina, you get a lot of money paid for each procedure that you do. And maybe you can do 10 of those procedures in an hour. Next. If you are a family practitioner and you spend 40 minutes with a 93-year-old lady who has 15 medical problems and 15 social problems, you get paid almost nothing.
The U.S. is having a deficit in doctors, and that deficit in doctors is mostly in primary care. So your family medicine, your pediatrics, your internal medicine.
Only about 5% of U.S. medical students go into primary care, 5%. That's incredibly low. It's a good living, but it may not be as high paying as some of these other specialties.
And I'm glad that I am able to be one of those physicians that can step in and be a primary care physician and fill in that gap.
I would love to go back to Newark and practice. There are a lot of diseases that are preventable, and they show up, they present later on down the line, and that's when most of the people will come to see the doctor. And I'm hoping that because I am from the community, I resemble a lot of the people in the community, that people will feel comfortable coming to me as a doctor, and earlier rather than later.
I'm interested in going back home, but I'm also interested in going wherever I'm needed.
So since I finished my residency last year, I've been part of a global health fellowship working essentially with medical students at the College of Medicine in Malawi. I was one of a group of family doctors who essentially accompanied and taught the family medicine rotation in a rural hospital. To work with the medical students there was incredibly empowering and humbling, because these were the only medical students in the entire country.
I'm getting ready to start residency in the next couple of weeks here in Chicago. My hospital is a county hospital. Like any county hospital across the country, it takes care of the uninsured or the underserved community.
I'll be starting a job actually in another residency program as a faculty member there. So in my position as a faculty member, I'll be able to teach some of the things that I learned in Cuba to American grads also.
And I think bringing that biopsychosocial, the biological, psychological, and social aspect from Cuba to the U.S. will definitely be essential to this preventative medicine, community medicine tie-in that we're trying to do here in the U.S. and incorporate that into our U.S. health system.
It's our hope that as these young doctors return to the United States and are in positions of power, that they will help to revolutionize the approach to health in the United States.
We can form different communities of doctors that can impact that and change the medicine in the U.S., where people actually see us going into communities.
We can't wait for people to come see us. We have to go out and find out who's sick, and we have to treat them. And it's gonna take all of us to do it. And it's hard. This is a hard road. But we all have to bond together, and we really must go out and find, who needs help. That's our responsibility. When I was in Cuba, we didn't wait for patients. We knocked on people's doors. Are you sick? And you'd be surprised how many people we found doing that might have gone below the radar.
You should think about, what do you want in life? Is your life about making money, or is your life about trying to do good and to leave a mark on this world that can make it a better place? And I think if you have that in your heart, take a chance on Cuba.
Those who want to apply to the program, please apply. Don't be afraid.
I'm glad that I can be one of those individuals that has paved the way and let more Americans and more American programs know about ELAM and see that, hey, we're residency ready. We're doctor ready to come back to our country and serve our communities.
We're seeing the fruits of this labor. We're seeing these incredible, committed doctors, really pursuing their dreams and providing the care that's so urgently needed in communities across the U.S.
There is a new army of doctors coming that want to change the scope of medicine.
South Bronx. Yo, grito viva Fidel en el nombre del Mir y de Miguel. Yo sigo pa'lante hasta siempre comandante, con mis rimas y mi arte participo con mi parte. Internacional, un chileno en el Yuma. International, Angola, junto a Cuba. Revolutionaries up in Harlem, eating Malcolm. Bay of Pigs invasion, man, we all know the outcome. Building with Mandela, building with Allende. Anticapitalista, el pueblo pobre está presente. I'm worldwide, like a Cuban doctor. Revolution is the only option.
Estoy también y le voy a ser fiel a la patria del Martín, a la patria del Fidel. Yo lo prometí y le voy a ser fiel a la patria del Martín, a la patria del Fidel.
Lo que les duele a ellos y les parece extraño es que una isla por más de 50 años siga de pie y no se deje intimidar, sin importarle el bloqueo ni la amenaza imperial. Los soviéticos se fueron, es verdad, Y ante el bloqueo y la necesidad, nos levantamos de aquella realidad, con poco material pero con mucha dignidad. Mi respeto para aquellos 5 hermanos, mi respeto para los médicos cubanos, mi respeto para el que nunca se dejó vender, ni traicionó esta patria de Fidel.
Orgullo